Things have been moving pretty fast since we launched the Nightmare Alley channel. We dabble in the strange, creepy, and outright terrifying, but nothing prepared us for the contact our very own Professor Spooky recently made on the dark web while searching for unsettling stories. Our channel hasn't been around long, so he was as surprised as anyone when he was approached by an organization calling itself Creepy Leaks. This organization claims to have terabytes of encrypted government files from a top-secret organization calling itself the Enhanced Services Department. Never heard of it? Neither had we. But if even a drop of the following is true, the world we all live in has gotten a lot stranger and more terrifying than it already seems. The following has been pulled from the thousands of documents Professor Spooky has been able to decrypt and decipher, with some of his own notes worked in. Professor Spooky here. I'm piecing together and transposing what I've decrypted as quickly as possible. In addition to a dossier prepared by Creepy Leaks, I have a lifetime's worth of files to sift through. These files and scans of old documents and photos have not been organized in any fashion, not even in file naming. I have been able to piece together a rough timeline of a covert intel organization that basically operates like Blackwater, but is used to combat supernatural creatures and the paranormal. Maybe it's a hoax, but who would go to such lengths to create terabytes of official-looking government documents and archival photos? Regardless, we will continue to do our due diligence and maintain a healthy source of skepticism as we move forward with our research. Nightmare Alley asks that you, dear viewer, do the same. The following is what I've been able to stitch together so far. The origins of the Enhanced Services Department, or possibly Directorate, began as a private research foundation born out of a Victorian-era club and is now a government-funded and sanctioned U.S. intelligence agency. Its role in national security appears to have grown significantly since 9/11. It has its own arm of direct action operatives. ESD is much smaller than other intel organizations, but is well suited for its mission, as well as its very behind-the-scenes role in the security establishment of the United States. ESD operates in the black due to the sensitive nature of utilizing supernatural and paranormal resources. The threats that they deal with are very dangerous. It is their mission to contain, not just counter, these threats, as most of the world does not acknowledge the general existence of the paranormal. It is not within ESD's charter to conceal or hide these activities, but, due to OPSEC and the need to keep their existence a secret, much of what they have done has never seen the light of day. What we have uncovered, if credible, will alter everyone's understanding of how the world works forever. Following 9/11, the director of ESD asked permission from the president to make their existence known to the heads of the IC and the DoD in an attempt to make their assets more valuable in the new global war on terror. During the 90s, ESD, like many other experts and agencies, predicted that the new threats to the United States were not those of the conventional and traditional sort that we faced in the Cold War, but asymmetrical threats that sought to hit us where we are most vulnerable. After some skepticism, the intel community set up protocols that would allow ESD to remain in the shadows and for them to share specific information with ESD and work with ESD in a compartmentalized manner. This full integration with the organs of national security placed ESD in a position to better execute its original mission. ESD began as something much more humble, but with very lofty goals. It began as a research project by members of the Oracle Society. The Oracle Society was a private club founded in the 19th century by Christian explorers and academics who needed a private enclave where they could discuss the ancient and esoteric rituals and customs they had discovered around the world. They needed a place where they could discuss their findings and the philosophies growing up around them in an open and frank manner that would make them potential pariahs in their other social circles, regardless of how widespread spiritualism had spread across the late Victorian world. They identified evil and powerful undercurrents in the world, and they fell back on their faith as a bulwark against the things they encountered in their travels. As I feverishly type up and cut and paste from the decrypted files, I, Professor Spooky, want to interject here that the founding of the Oracle Society may date much further back than the 19th century. There appears to be a sizable chunk from this info dump that I am unable to decode with my limited software and humble hacking skills. I have enlisted the help of others to insist on this front, and I am eager to dive deeper down the Oracle Society rabbit hole. To date, I have been able to decrypt the following information. After the events of the American Civil War and other events in Europe, the club made the decision to go underground. There was a concern governments or powerful industrialists would use the Oracle Society's knowledge as a weapon. Those who would seek this information would easily be able to target the club and its members to gain access. The Society felt they had a moral obligation to prevent this from occurring. After almost 90 years of existence, nearly 60 of it in secret, descendants of members secretly moved into positions of significant social and political power. These members tapped into the club resources to help explain various occult events and connections to individuals as Western use of the occult increased over time. A special projects committee was formed that would catalog and track discoveries that the Society determined too dangerous. This led to the creation of the Harbison Committee. Noelle Harbison was a woman of unparalleled intellect. She was the nexus around which the group that would eventually evolve into Enhanced Services Department was formed. Noelle's husband, Clark Harbison, was a key member of the Society during the early 20th century. Noelle was a prolific member of the Society. Her husband Clark was killed in 1922 on an expedition to Tibet. Following this, she rose to a higher level of prominence to break through the glass ceiling within a private club that only during World War I admitted women. Noelle Harbison was not a first-class explorer or field researcher. It was her skill as a conceptual thinker as well as her analytical and organizational abilities that allowed her to gain the respect of the members of the Oracle Society. This brought her to prominence within the club and placed her in the position to form a working group that was focused on paranormal and psychic warfare research. While not an active participant in these disciplines, she was first among equals in understanding the use and security implications of various disciplines and resources. The Harbison Committee was established with Noelle as its head when the Oracle Society was first enlisted by the White House in the mid-30s. This contact was in response to the rising tide of the Nazi Party in Germany. The Nazis were allied with the Thule Society and other groups of occult practitioners at direct odds with the Oracle Society, who sought arcane knowledge to increase their strength and to provide weapons and relics to be used to advance the Nazis' goals around the world. Other known occult groups associated with the Nazis were the Vril and the Ordre d'Anguille. Prior to and during the war, Noelle's working group, the Enhanced Services Department, as it began to be called, provided intelligence and research support for the war effort. Their activities were limited to field research, supernatural intelligence gathering, relic gathering, and cryptoarchaeology. Information they provided allowed the Allied agents to foil the Nazi occult operations on a number of occasions. Like their technological exploits, the Nazis' occult efforts were unfocused and ultimately pointless. It wasn't until the emergence of the communist threat in the late 40s that the Oracle Society took on a more active role rather than one as a consulting civilian organization. ESD stood down their government affairs branch following the end of the war, but the beginning of the Cold War saw the need for expanded responsibilities as many of the Nazi projects were continuing under the auspices of new masters in both the USA and the USSR. Their connections within the OSS, now the CIA, and the White House encouraged the Oracle Society to accept U.S. government grant money and to also take part in a supernatural version of Operation Paperclip known as Operation Powerhouse. Operation Powerhouse sought to recruit and employ various Nazi occult and paranormal practitioners and researchers. These former Nazis were brought over to the U.S. as part of the original Operation Paperclip, and then they were disappeared by either fake deaths, international travel, or they were brought over secretly in detention with the promise of freedom after working through their detainment. Some members of Operation Powerhouse brought to Harbison new disciplines that they never actively pursued, such as demon summoning, the use of magical sigils, and techniques related to necromancy. Professor Spooky here. I should add here that I've uncovered one incredible example of a Thule Society project that was recovered following the war that I hope to receive more data on from Creepy Leaks. Project Prussian Soldier. I'm surprised it wasn't mentioned in their dossier. Data is still being decoded. Over 2 terabytes of encrypted and decompressed data on Project Prussian Soldier alone exist. What has been decrypted is this. The sole subject of Project Prussian Soldier was brought back to the U.S. and studied. However, the subject was deemed too corrupted in its creation to replicate. He or it is an undead construct that is essentially an immortal soldier. The files only refer to this undead construct as a test subject in the late 40s and early 50s. It is unknown what happened to the project after these tests concluded, if they were ever concluded at all. If you have a mental picture of a zombie Captain America, you are thinking correctly. At around this time, the Oracle Society and the CIA entered into a permanent relationship that would separate the Harbison Committee from the Society and make it a functional wing of America's intelligence community. The result was the research and development group called Department 37. The Eisenhower administration had several very well-placed Oracle Society members that helped Noel Harbison, who by this time was being marginalized by members of the CIA looking to weaponize some of the more dangerous disciplines at their disposal. Noel was getting too old in their view, so with some deft political maneuvering in 1958, she managed to free Department 37 from the control of the CIA and created an autonomous group that in 1962 finalized its organizational structure into something that generally resembles how ESD exists today. The JFK years were good to the newly liberated ESD, in large part due to Kennedy's mistrust of the CIA following the Bay of Pigs debacle. In 1962, it solidified its organization and its budget was hidden away from public eyes. Officially, the organization ceased to exist. A large ranch deeded to the Society in Northern California near a U.S. Air Force base served as ESD's headquarters, and may still to this day. The ranch was large enough and remote enough to keep prying eyes away from their projects. This is also the period where there was a deliberate and clean separation of the Oracle Society and the Harbison Committee. The Society's role was one of pure research and social interaction, while ESD was a legitimate field intelligence agency whose operations were now solely dedicated to the objectives of national security. It was around this time that the Society changed their name to the Oracle Foundation. Members of the Foundation that had knowledge of the committee were sworn to secrecy, and new members were not informed at all. Recruitment was conducted separately from the membership of the Foundation. ESD kept informants within the Foundation as there were benefits to tapping into their ongoing research and discoveries. Professor Spooky here. It is reasonable to suspect that the reverse occurred as well, though this is not substantiated by any document read to date. In 1964, following the beginning of the Vietnam War, ESD conducted an operation that removed all memories of their existence from the members of the CIA that they deemed untrustworthy. ESD psychic adepts conducted mental penetrations on specific CIA officers and officials to erase their existence. ESD also conducted physical destruction of records using clandestine enhanced techniques that to this day have not been revealed. This was also the first operations against members of another U.S. intelligence agency to protect ESD's secrecy. This was all done with the direct knowledge of the POTUS, and this placed ESD in the Black Realm, or as it's known in the Oval Office, ESD became a green folder project, along the same lines as alien research and advanced propulsion in Area 51. During the 60s and 70s, ESD conducted operational intel and kinetic operations throughout the world. Many of ESD's missions were in a support capacity of larger operations. During this period, ESD saved the world on 4 different occasions only to face near extinction during the Carter administration. Only the Iranian hostage crisis took the target off ESD's back when they were enlisted to help resolve that issue. While their solutions were not actioned, they provided critical foresight and enhanced intelligence. During the 70s, CIA research into paranormal topics gained some attention, especially under the MK-Ultra program. MK-Ultra, ESD believed, was intended by the CIA to counter ESD's role within the IC. ESD operatives within the agency promoted Project Stargate, a research project that sought to leverage noetic theory, a branch of paranormal research long studied by the ESD. ESD's objectives were to discredit the line of study within the agency while skimming likely candidates from the CIA's pool for their own use. ESD actively sabotaged these CIA programs in a manner that to this day embarrasses the CIA. This operation was successful, and psychic research was again rejected by mainstream government agencies. In 1981, ESD was responsible for a clandestine operation that allowed them to thwart a paranormal assassination attempt on the president. This gained them a great deal of support and an increased budget from the Reagan administration and brought the White House relationship with ESD to an all-new high. It is speculated in the Creepy Leaks documents that this was the source of the Reagans' fondness for fortune-telling in their private lives. A passive-aggressive relationship between the ESD and CIA existed until 9/11, when there was a significant need for ESD to come out of the shadows and operate with albeit minor amounts of cooperation with other intelligence agencies. ESD remains classified to this day. When operating in the field with other secretive government organizations like the CIA and parts of the DoD, they are undercover and operate under a cover story or only vaguely refer to the nature of their work. This allows their fellow intel operatives to draw their own conclusions. In the field, ESD operatives are referred to only by code names, with the nature of their work a closely guarded secret. The most open part of ESD's work is the research and development group known as the Office of Other Than Technological Methods, or more simply, OTM, whose public face is of weird eggheads who are trying to prove paranormal activities. In reality, they are highly effective. Under their purview, they assume responsibility for any proven paranormal or supernatural asset or phenomenon that manifests anywhere in the world. They use the intentionally vague term other than technological methods of intelligence gathering and operational data. OTM regularly interacts with NSA, NRO, and other technical intelligence agencies. Often they are called when any type of paranormal signature is picked up during traditional collection operations. They also have the ability to monitor national assets in the search for signatures that may interest them. The ESD appears to provide administrative and budgetary control over 3 operational directorates. Resource Directorate. This cell manages the magical resources for ESD. They find, create, and equip direct action shadow cells with all the magical gear needed to complete any given mission. OTM falls under this directorate. In addition to their regular interaction with other intelligence agencies, they also provide long-term research and analysis on both internal magical projects and intelligence concerning magical events. OTM also provides intelligence and feeds the plans and targeting efforts for all ESD operations. The Directorate has operational plans and targeting cells as part of its mission purview. Some of these support personnel deploy forward with the operators who conduct the missions. The planners and targeting analysts often act as in-the-field level interface between ESD and other organizations like the CIA and DoD. This directorate is sometimes known by their nickname, NRES, which dates back to the 1960s. This refers to the enhanced resources or magic items they research. Verification Directorate. This is the field component of the ESD. The Directorate's field teams are composed of 2 to 10 individuals who are a mix of civilian, intel, and military backgrounds. All recruited personnel are recruited for specific security and operation effects. Other members are recruited due to the enhanced potential they are then trained in internally. Once they pass their operational evaluations, they then become active field assets. This training consists of standard field operative training, but also a special course of work that focuses on operationalizing their enhanced talent. The Directorate's officers conduct traditional clandestine intelligence gathering activities, very much like what you would think Cold War-era spies would endure, but on the opposite end of the scale is the paramilitary division, which handles all manner of kinetic operations such as lethal targeting, enhanced item retrieval, etc. Between both enhanced and normal operators, there are about 40 operators who are available for worldwide deployment as part of ESD paramilitary force. Logistics Directorate. This section of the organization contains all of the enablers that provide support for the field operations. It operates in the open as mundanely named civilian companies who operate for profit. Behind the scenes, they provide enhanced options for logistics, communications, transportation, ISR, and fire support. Key logistical functions are diverse. They are ESD's Q branch. Their enhanced R&D facility actively works to meld fantastical abilities to everyday items to assist the work of the ESD. We have received more documents that we are in the process of decrypting and sorting. Some are proving harder to decrypt than others. We are nearly finished decrypting one promising document that appears to detail the classification of other dimension entities, or ODENs, that ESD has encountered on numerous occasions. If the information provided by CreepyLeaks is to be trusted, our world has been visited by these hostile ODENs on hundreds of occasions. Alarming to say the least. Professor Spooky shall return with more dark web tales once decryption has completed and Nightmare Alley is able to produce the videos. You'll want to subscribe and click the notification bell to not miss a single info dump.